Okay, welcome to this GoEngineer webinar on Visualize. We're going to be taking a look at a cell phone type device today, applying new colors and textures, saving colors and textures, setting up templates, modifying the scene, adding some lights, and then walking through the general SOLIDWORKS user interface, as well as some of the import options inside of Visualize. So, as we kind of trek through this, I'll be monitoring the question and answer forum that we have there. I'll also be looking at the chat. So if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in there. I'll try to answer them as we kind of move through, and maybe not answer it right away, but kind of weave it in where it makes sense. And then if I don't have a spot for it, maybe I'll mention that, and we'll just tackle it at the end there. So go ahead and type some questions away. We'll have a little bit of time for some Q&A at the end. Cool. Okay, let's switch it over to my other monitor here. And this thing loves to not resize, so we got to resize this. Give me 1 second. Cool. One down, one to go. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to start out today with the SOLIDWORKS interface. So now one cool thing, I guess, about Visualize versus maybe some other tools like PhotoView 360 is PhotoView is tied to a SOLIDWORKS seat, which means you have to have a seat of SOLIDWORKS to use it. But the cool thing about Visualize is you don't have to have SOLIDWORKS installed in your machine to do some really awesome, really cool renders. So but if you do have SOLIDWORKS, there is kind of a bonus. The bonus is that we have the Visualize add-in that we can turn on. So if you go to your options add-ins, so you can go to your options here and go to add-ins and then scroll down to Visualize, check it on left and right. This will load on startup and load on command, right? And so when that happens, you have your new Visualize tab. And we have export simple, export advanced, update, and save. So here we can take a model that looks pretty cool, pretty basic. It's just like a piece of aluminum, essentially, with some dimensions and annotations on it. And if we do an export simple, let's change something first. Let's change this guy. We're going to change the color so we can talk about that. We're going to make it green, something kind of weird on purpose. And if we do an export simple, what SOLIDWORKS and Visualize kind of work together at is grouping the different colors on the model, and then loading the Visualize project with those different colors as paintable objects. So if we look at the things that we can paint now in this Visualize interface, we have something without material applied. That's cool. We have the polished aluminum, and we have the color that we made. I think there's no material. It's actually the threads. Let's see if we can figure that one out there. Yep, it's the thread that was placed on this side. So that just means we have 3 paintable objects. So if I go paint any one of these, essentially there's like 3 automatic separations of components that I can paint. What am I looking for here? I'm looking for metal. Okay. So you can like paint this guy anodized red, and then regular anodized on this guy, and then we can do like copper at the center of that. Okay, so simple advanced, or export simple rather, simple advanced, takes the colors in SOLIDWORKS and groups them together. Let's go ahead and try this one more time with the advanced. And I'm looking for SOLIDWORKS. There we go. So with the advanced option, what we can do is, sure thing. We can also include motion studies, and I don't have a motion study of this guy, but if we did have a motion study, I could choose to import that with it, which is kind of nice. But what this is going to do is just going to make, if it were an assembly, each part in the assembly or all the parts in the assembly, the paintable objects. So what I'm expecting here is to just have one root component. There's some default materials there, but another bonus to this too is under Advanced or General. Haha, there we go. We have the original source information here. So it tells me where I got this file from, and then it's actually reading the file. So you wouldn't get that in the simple import, rather. Cool. Okay, so that's the quick lowdown on the SolidWorks side of things. We're pretty much not going to come back to the SolidWorks menu. We're just going to concentrate and visualize for now. But if you are using SolidWorks, these are the two bonuses you have. And if you do a motion study or like an explode view, and you can capture that using the animation wizard tool, then we can reuse that and visualize using the add-in. But for now, let's go ahead and concentrate on visualize. All right, cool. So there's this default project, and I was just thinking that maybe if anyone wanted to follow along, they can go ahead and open up this phone file. We can kind of click along together if you choose, and if not, if you just want to watch this, that's okay. We're going to go ahead and make a recording of this. That way, you guys can go back and rewatch anything that you need to see again. Right off the bat, one of the things that I would like to share with you guys about the setup under options, I'm just checking chat and I'm checking questions. Looks like we're all clear. Is to, on your first fire up, what we really need to do is to make sure that our user interface is set up correctly and that we're working in the SolidWorks CAD. So this makes sense if you're a SolidWorks user. Right? If you're a SolidWorks user, then all your hotkeys like rotate and then pan, those are all going to be, as expected, right? You don't have to relearn some new knowledge. If you're an old school veteran, bunk speed or visualize user, you might go to this original option here. But these two things are kind of ideal. Okay, so set yours to SolidWorks CAD if you're a SolidWorks user. And then for the next tip, if you go to your 3D viewport, you can select what render engine you're using. We'll get to that in a second. And then also, really importantly, the resolution of your UI. So this resolution right here, this maximum resolution, is essentially the resolution of this box in the screen. Okay, so if I make this bigger, right, then I'm rendering more pixels live, which means it's a harder load on my computer when I'm making changes on the fly, right? So when we're changing this resolution, we want to be wary about how high or how low we go, depending on what graphics card we have. So my computer likes to run the 1280 by 720. It also tells you that, hey, if you run it at lower performance, it'll or lower settings, this will increase performance. Now I'm running a 1080 monitor, right? So this one makes a lot of sense for me. If I bumped it up to 1920 by 1080, it would fill my whole screen, and I wouldn't have enough room for all my little widgets. So I really find this one to be like a really happy spot. This 1280 by 720, it's like a 720p kind of option there. Denoiser is something that I have had excellent experience with in the past, but I turn it off when I am recording and broadcasting, and that's because I just don't want to crash mid. I don't want my computer to freeze or something, something crazy to happen. I don't want to crash. I want my recording to be good. So in general, what I say is turn this on. The reason why I have this turned off is because I'm doing like 4 things all at once, right? SolidWorks, recording, broadcasting, and then running the camera and all kinds of other stuff. So I just turn that off for now, but I would definitely keep that on. And then the last thing we're going to talk about here is the render engine. So new in 2020, Visualize 2020, which by the way, you can run Visualize ahead of SolidWorks. It won't impede anyone. You're the last one down the stream if you're using Visualize. So I always tell people, even if your engineering department's on 18 or 19 or whatever for SolidWorks, go ahead and bump yours up to 20. Let's go ahead and get all those new enhancements from the latest release. And in 2020, they've always had the NVIDIA iRay. That was out like right when it came out, but they've added AMD Pro Render. And so the difference here is that NVIDIA runs off of CUDA cores, which is NVIDIA specific. So you have to have an NVIDIA graphics card for that to work, and specifically a CUDA-enabled graphics card. With the AMD Pro Render option, right, all you need is OpenCL capabilities. So every graphics card that's been produced probably in the last decade, that might be a stretch, maybe like 5 years for sure, 100% sure in the last 5 or 6 years, has OpenCL capabilities, OpenCL 12, I think, or 14. But it doesn't matter. As long as it's OpenCL, right, then we can utilize those resources to run a render. So whether you have an AMD graphics card or an NVIDIA graphics card, you can run Pro Render. However, NVIDIA only runs on NVIDIA. So that's just the FYI there. Both engines run about the same speed. There's not like a perk or benefit or a speed boost to running one or the other, in my opinion. There are some things that are really nice done in Pro Render, like plastic textures and maybe some differences in shadows. So if you're getting a render and you're just not quite sure what you're doing wrong, maybe try switching to the AMD Pro Render tool and see if it looks any better for you. And then if you've been using NVIDIA iRay in the past, I would say try the new Pro Render engine, because it does run pretty nice and run pretty smooth. And in fact, that's actually what I'm running now. So you can see there I have the Radeon Pro WX 9100, and at the end of the day, the bang for the buck on this graphics card, the reason why I bought it and the reason why I got it, right, wasn't because GoEngineer bought it for me, it's because I bought it for myself, is because I wanted to be able to do some offline rendering, both in Visualize and video editing, in Resolve, right? I wanted to do my video editing and cutting in Resolve. I wanted, something good for general purpose, and I wanted something good for SolidWorks and Visualize. And this is really where my money carried me the furthest, I think, to have a certified graphics card for all those applications, the WX9100. So I'm really happy with my purchase. But anyway, that's the lowdown on the options. There's one last thing we're going to get to, and that's our Visualize project file. So let's go ahead and start here. Looks like we have a question real quick. Hey Adam, I have an older SolidWorks 2012. Is Visualize available for that platform? Does Visualize only work for newer SolidWorks versions? Thanks, Fred. Thanks, Fred, for the question. Back in 2016, SolidWorks Visualize Standard became a part of the SolidWorks install. So your license in 2016 would entitle you to that. Unfortunately, because you have a 2012 version, you either have to buy a new seat of SolidWorks, a new seat of Visualize, or buy Visualize Pro, or ask your sales rep for a trial and see how that works for you. Cool, thanks for the question. Yeah, 2016 was when Visualize debuted for SolidWorks. It used to be called Bunk Speed back in the day. SolidWorks purchased them and then rebranded it SolidWorks Visualize, and now we have what we have now, right? Which I guess is Visualize. Okay, so one of the biggest crocs I have when I'm looking at and helping other customers is that they have this default project file blank. I'm just like, no, you wouldn't do that if you were a photographer, right? Let's talk about what this little category means before we get into the nitty gritty of Visualize here. I promise we'll trek through the boring stuff and get to the actual visual stuff, right? It's coming. It's right around the corner. I got you guys. Okay, so Visualize default project is really important, and here's why. If you're a photographer, you went out and bought a $5,000 camera, right? That doesn't make you a photographer, by the way. That just means you have a lot of money. But, in theory, if you wanted to become a photographer, what would you be doing? Well, you would probably be setting up a photo studio, kind of like maybe the one that I have, right? With some lights and some different backdrops and some snazzy things here and there. And, and you might have a couple different rooms, one for objects, one for people, right? Or one for a family versus one for single portraits. So this project here is essentially like those virtual studios that you would make if you were a real photographer. So it's really common for you to have more than one for small, one for big, one for large, one for, panoramic, one for little tiny projects, whatever it may be. But this is your virtual studio. So if you don't have something here, you're really missing out. All right. I'm going to walk you through how to make your own template. Right. I have a couple videos on this too on YouTube. So if you go to GoEngineer and just search Atom and template and GoEngineer, you might find a couple. But we really need to work on this. And this is like one of the biggest ways that you can save a whole bunch of time. Okay. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and start making a template here. So I have this phone file, and I'm going to go ahead and switch this over to my accurate mode utilizing my ProRender. Render option, right? We should see that load here in just a second. It's going to say accurate ProRender. Just taking a second to initialize here for whatever reason. And we're going to take a look at the lights. We're going to take a look at the background. We're going to take a look at the scene. Kind of look at how the lighting looks right off the bat, and kind of make some decisions about how we want to take this one step further. So if you guys want to follow along, you guys can go to File, Open, and then there should be a option for you to open up like sample projects. You can go ahead and open up the phone file. I'll give you guys a second if you guys want to do that. Actually respond in the chat if you think you might want to try to follow along. If not, I'll kind of work forward here. Anyone trying to follow? Okay, I'll give you guys like 15 more seconds to open up the default phone sample project. It's going to look something like this, although mine has something green in here. I think I overrided it. So don't worry if it doesn't match the green. Go ahead and switch it over to your accurate mode just so we can look at a couple things. And then for those of you who don't have, or who just are new to Visualize, don't worry about this. As soon as you get it loaded, you can follow this video. We'll send you a link for the recording. You can watch, stop, and replay. Likewise, if you fall behind, don't worry about it. You'll be able to watch the recording. Okay, cool. So let's talk about this default project, right? So I'm going to go ahead and trek over to my appearances. I'm kind of going to scroll down here and take a look at all these different widgets. Okay, so we have keypads, buttons, lenses, aluminum, gunmetal. That's cool. If these are the things you use all the time, these can be really helpful, right? Okay, so mental note this. Let's go ahead and jump to our scenes. These are all the default scenes that might be in here. The blurred studio, the classic photo studio, the chrome studio. Maybe you want to add a couple just to be a little creative. Let's go ahead and do that now. So we're going to go ahead to File Locations, which is the library book stack in the upper right-hand corner. And then instead of appearance shopping, we're going to go ahead and look for our environments. All right. Okay, so some of the ones that I like are like Auto Photo Studio. I think that one looks really cool. There's one called Dazzler that you can download that looks really cool. You just drag and drop them in space. Maybe you want this fall street, right? You can drag and drop that in place. Kind of depends on the product you have, right? Low key is also really cool, so you can grab and drop low key. Kind of bring that in there. That probably needs a rotate, or it is zoomed out really far. Maybe you need to scale that down. I actually, mental note, I've used this for really small objects, and it works fantastic. Yeah, so, we can just grab a couple. But what we've done, if we go back to our scene category, is we've populated more environments, more backdrops, more lighting configurations, right, in our scene environments. Now, stick with me here. It'll all make sense in just a second. We've pre-populated this. In our Appearances tab, we might need to pre-populate some more things that we use a lot. So think of 4 or 5 materials that you use on a regular basis that you would want to be loaded essentially every time you load Visualize, right? Okay, so let's go back to our library and think about some of those materials. Again, under library, we can select Appearances, and then maybe you use copper a lot. All right, so let's paint some copper on this thing. Maybe you use gunmetal a bit, right? So let's go ahead and grab gunmetal, drag and drop it in. Now, I'm not digging this background right now, but I'm not worried about it, right? We'll get there. maybe use heat treat. And feel free to browse the different categories to see what materials you might want to add on a regular basis, right? So like leather, you can even go to the cloud and download some other ones. So here's like paint. Keep in mind, if you go to the cloud, everything with the green check on it's on your system. Everything without is not. So you could grab some old paint, some red paint, and you can add it to your list there. Okay, so now hopefully that you've done this, right? You can go to your paint bucket and you can see the new appearances you've created. Or added, rather. Likewise with decals, so on. We won't do the decals, but you'll get the idea. And in fact, you'll probably end up deleting this default scene that we make now anyhow, because you're going to get better at it by the end of this this little session here. Okay. So now we have some materials populated. Now we have some scenes populated. Now we can get some cameras populated. And for the sake of showing something cooler, I'm going to go ahead and turn on, what am I going to turn? I'm going to turn on Dazzler. The Dazzler background. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's add some cameras. Now maybe your company, right, produces products that are on an e-commerce site. And so traditionally, you have front, top, and right views, and maybe an isometric view. Okay, cool. So we're going to take this default camera. You can rename this if we like. We're going to rename this to Sandbox. Oops. I'm typing with one hand because my right hand's broken. So I've been doing this all left-handed so far. The worst thing about that is typing. Okay, so Sandbox. Cool. And then what we're going to do is we're going to select that camera, Control-C, Control-V, right? And we can get a copy of it. Okay, so this one has a pretty nice perspective, right? So I'm going to zoom in and put it right in the center. And then I'm going to click on this guy and name it, I don't know, P1, right, for perspective 1. Okay, I like it. I'm going to Control-V again. That's going to copy my sandbox again. And this time I'm going to put my front view in place. So I'm going to go to my View Presets. I'm going to find my front view option and click on it. I did goof just a little bit. I might undo this just for a second. Because what I wanted to do was, here I have my sandbox, here I have my P1. I guess it doesn't matter. We don't have to control Z. Sandbox is sandbox for a reason. It's a play camera, right? But what we want to do is double click our sandbox 2 to activate it. So now that it's active, I want to go to my front view, right? Save the front view out. Okay, so now my sandbox 2 should be called front. So I'm going to just put F for front. Now I'm going to Control-V again. We're going to name this one right. So R. And I'm going to double click to activate it. Go to my view palette, select my right option. Control-V. We're going to name this one top. Double click to activate. You should be getting the hang of this now. Control-V again. We'll do our last one. Double click. Call this one ISO. Nice. Okay. So don't worry about if you have this right just right off the bat, right? This is just the intro to your default. Make sure you have a couple options there. And now when we look at our camera tab, right, we can see that we have a sandbox camera, perspective 1, front, top, right, ISO. I mean, you might even add a video camera here. That would work. But the idea is that we are pre-populating our scene. We're setting up all of our cameras. We are those professional photographers with their photo booths, right? Only we're all virtual. And now what we need to do is essentially erase the model, right? So, right, to do that, we're going to go to our Models tab. And we want to clear everything from this menu, right? So there shouldn't be anything here. So all you got to do is right click and delete, or single click delete, edit, delete. Okay, so when we do that, theoretically speaking, we don't have a model left. Now let's think for a second. If you're a photographer and your talent hasn't showed up yet, or the product isn't there, you have nothing to shoot. So this kind of makes sense, right? But meanwhile, we still have all of our assets that we had in our appearances. We had our decals. We had all of our studios. If we added any lights here, right, they would have showed up too, right? The lights would have been there. So you can right-click, add lights, have them all pre-populate. Our cameras are all there, only they kind of show the old preview. So here's how to get a default preview back, right? So if you double-click on Sandbox and you activate it, you can click Lock, Unlock, and it should reset the preview. Now I like to do this just because, I don't know, it kind of drives me crazy looking at something that's not there. I've seen some people who I've taught just use a cube for this, and that helps describe the orientation of the camera they're looking at. But a double click lock unlock really resets this this view thumbnail. Okay, so now we have a blank studio with no parts, waiting parts, right? Parts waiting to be thrown in there. Now we just need to save this. So you're going to do a file, save as, and you can save this as default project, whatever you want. Default DF Pro DFPR test, right? I'm gonna delete this later because I already have a lot of default projects in here, but you say, yeah, save it as a default project, click save, and then now, after it's done saving, you can go ahead and make this your default photo studio for you to use in the future. Now, whether you're new or new to visualize or veteran to visualize, you know, it's like 95% of the people I end up helping on a regular basis do not have this set up. And what they're doing is they're adding cameras, adding textures, adding lights and all this stuff every single time they make a render of a project, right? Very tedious. So what we want to do instead is make this our default project. And so here you could say default project, use current project as default, or you could browse to it. I should have had it, yep, DFPR test. Now every time I load a new file, it'll default with these materials, these scenes, these pictures, and so on. Great, so how are we doing so far, guys? Anyone able to follow that entirely? Go ahead and type in the chat if you got that set up. And let me know what you think about that thus far. Has anyone used the default project yet? Or maybe seen my video on default project so that they were aware of it or knew about it? Cool, thanks Tim, thanks Eric. Good so far. Nice time saver, all good. Okay, great. So you're going to want to make sure that you end up doctoring this up again once you kind of got the feel for, you know, some of the different things you can do, or some of the different shortcuts you can do for your particular company, for your particular product, right? This is very generic kind of thought process with just this phone file. But the idea is that, you know, you could have a large and small template for your large and small files. Can save you a whole bunch of time. Got it. Haven't used it before. Thanks, Gene. Any questions so far? I'm checking out the questions panel. Looks like we're all quiet. Okay, great. So the next part is, let's go ahead and open up this file again now that we got our templates done. I'm going to go and open my default phone file. We're going to create a couple custom textures and a couple custom pictures or decals rather, add some lights, and then wrap this thing up with a quick video animation, just so you guys get the idea about how to do that. Now, a couple of those things that I mentioned there, like lights and videos, those are going to be a SOLIDWORKS Visualize Professional characteristic, right, amongst a bunch of other things. But if you don't know if you have Pro or not, you can click About Visualize, and you can go ahead and look at, whether you have Visualize Pro. Okay, so we should have this default phone. Now, keep in mind this was already created and saved with its own template in the background, right? So it's using this project file and its template for all its background. So that work we just did wouldn't apply, but every new product that you bring in would have that new pictures, the new cameras rather, the new scenes, any lights you might have added. Okay, so one of the things I get a lot is a carbon fiber, right? Everyone, I love carbon fiber. Like, who doesn't like carbon fiber, right? Carbon fiber looks awesome. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a custom carbon fiber. Now, GoEngineer has this awesome green color to it, right? So it's rather convenient, to make green carbon fiber, but you can make carbon fiber whatever color you want. So what I'm doing off screen here, if you just give me just a second, is I'm pulling up GoEngineer real quick. I'm going to show you why. Again, that typing thing is making me slow, but stand by just for a second. Okay, so this is the GoEngineer website. I see the GoEngineer green I want. I even got a GoEngineer gray that I want. Ooh, I think I like that gray better, actually. I think I like this green better, too. Okay, these are all things that we're going to keep in mind. Oh, no, come back. Come back, colors. Let's just do a quick snip here so that they don't rotate. Okay, so now it doesn't matter what the website does because I have a snapshot of it. Nice. Okay, so we're going to keep this in mind. I'm going to move it off the screen just for a second. Maybe. If it will let me. Okay. It does not like me right now, so we're going to have to kill this. It's okay, I'll go back to you guys get the idea. What I want to do is I want to make this green, I want to make this carbon fiber, right? So what you can do, if you have a color in mind, right, you can type in a color, or if you know of your website, then you have a color on your website you want to use, go ahead and bring that up now. So go to your website, go ahead and find a color, and we're going to steal the color, all right? And meanwhile, I found this ultra gloss on the back. So I kind of like the ultra gloss thing, right? I'm digging it. But I'm going to type in GoE, G-O-E, ultra gloss carbon. And so that's how I'm going to save this thing as. And I need to do a couple of things to make this look cool, right? I'm probably going to leave all this the same minus the color. All right, so now in the color, if I was diligent at remembering the actual color codes that marketing gives me, then I would just type them in, right? I can type in my RGB or HSV values, or I could just find them from here and say, oh, that's good enough. Or what I could do is cheat and grab the color off of the website. Okay, so the way this works is I have my website on my left monitor. Because won't be able to see my website, but you'll be able to see a little preview in this window here of what I'm hovering over. Okay, so I'm gonna try to find that GoEngineer green color. So I'm gonna grab the color picker. I'm gonna click and drag, and I'm gonna click and drag. Oops, that left hand thing. I grabbed the white from the background. That's not gonna work. I'm gonna click and drag. I'm gonna mouse over to GoEngineer.com, and here you can see this is our blog link, right? So I can grab the yellow or the white from the blog, right? Or I can grab the GoEngineer logo, the bug icon, right? Oops, it's kind of, there we go. There's the little bug. I just grab that exact green, or I can come down and find another green that I like, or that gray that I like. We can make a gray. Okay, I'm gonna find the Go green, which is the actual G part of the Go. See if that updates there for you guys. That's the G. That's the color green I want. I'm going to click and release. And in theory, I got the exact color green that I'm looking for. So step 1 down, right? That's just a little particular, right, about choosing the right color. But at least I could say, hey, I just grabbed the one off the website. Kind of cool. Okay, so the next step is adding texture. So we can go to our texture. We're going to add a bump texture. And now the important thing about textures are that we're one corner. Okay. So let's step this back. They're all JPEGs, right? They're all just pictures, but they're pictures that can be nested or tiled together, right? So we're like, if we look at this carbon fiber one, right, we can see it's a pattern of this brick layout over and over again, this L pattern, right? And then where this one ends, it begins here. And then where this one ends, it begins there, and so on, right? So these can be tiled without any seams. Likewise for this circle, right? Where this one ends, this one begins. And then where this one ends, this one begins. So you can tile it perfectly. Okay, so really, you can find these all over the internet. There's a ton of free ones. These are the default ones that come with SOLIDWORKS, right? Anyhow, I'm going to grab carbon fiber because it's really convenient. It's located right here. I'm going to click open. Now you can see my carbon fiber mesh on the back of my phone. And it's in the GoEngineer green color, which is exactly how I want it to look. Okay, from there, we can increase our bump strength, which is how embossed, right, this bump texture is. So the higher this value, the more robust, right, this carbon fiber looks. This looks more like a basket weave rather than a carbon fiber weave. Right, we're going to bring this back to 1. And then for our tile, we have UV. There are different tile methods depending on what you are texturing. This is UV works great for this, but I feel like you might need to switch to like planar or spherical or radial or cylindrical depending on what type of product you have. And then the last thing to do here is adjust the tile. So if I take the tile and bump it down, right, we're getting less pictures, less texture JPEGs per area, right? And if I come up, I'm getting more texture JPEGs per area. That's just how I tell people to remember it. This higher value here means more pictures per area, right? In the UV. Sometimes that makes sense. Okay, so then you can adjust this to the tile size that you like. I'm going to do 1.25. Oops. Okay, 5.2 works too. And this is going to be my new texture. Okay, so we've renamed this thing. It's called GoE Ultra Texture. But right now, this texture only exists inside of this file, so we need to save this out so we can use this later. Okay, so you're going to click the export button here at the top. Save appearance. And I've gone ahead and made my own folder. So in this list is the default folder for Visualize. You can right-click, new folder, and save as, like, I have a GoEngineer custom. But you could save it as, your company custom or however you want to remember it. And in this list, I'm going to go ahead and save GoE Ultra Gloss Carbon. Right? And so what that does is that adds it to my library. So if I go to my library, and then I go to my Appearance tab, and then select GoEngineer, which is at not in the cloud, it is local. I can find my GoEngineer custom, and then now I can find my GoEngineer Ultra Gloss Carbon Fiber. Yay, it's there. So what I've done is I've created a various versions of this, right? I have a GoEngineer Anodize, which I can grab and paint on the outside of this thing. That texture map is very high, right? Probably should be a little bit smaller. I also have saved a screen, so I can drag and drop a new screen on here. And the screen has a color texture that is being hidden. Oops. Okay, so this didn't save out the way I wanted it to save out, but really these are just pictures, right? And same thing with the GoEngineer logo. So this is the thing that we're going to add next. We're going to add a GoEngineer logo and decal and some pictures on this thing. So I'm going to walk you through that, and then we'll add some lights, and then finish this up with an animation. Okay, so we got a question here. Let me see if this. Okay, so the question is, if you've already done all the work and you've created a default project, and you want to add stuff to it, can you just save over that project? Yeah, absolutely. So we just created a default project all together, or maybe you saw it happen, and you're like, oh shoot, I meant to add this, and this to it, I forgot. One of the things you can do is just add a dummy object. So if you go to your models, you can right click, and then say, what do I want? I want a new model. We can grab like a sphere, and then you'd see it's like right there. If you actually wanted to see it, we could blow it up some more, right? And then so what you can do is you could paint the sphere or color it or add lighting to it, and then add this to your default project, paint it, do whatever you need to do it, and then come back and delete it, and all those things will remain, and your newly added geometry will stay. Your newly added geometry will go away. Meanwhile, your scenes and your cameras will stay put. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, cool. Thanks. That was a good one. Okay, so now we need to add some pictures and some decals. So what I'm looking to do here, I'm going to right click and then say new decal. I'm going to grab an image. And from here, I'm going to go find my GoEngineer picture. Now this could be any picture you've saved. I need to find this one real quick. Just give me a second, guys. Here we go. GoEngineer logo. Okay. So this is like a default GoEngineer logo that thing I took off the internet. I think it's just a capture, actually. So what I can do is I can drag and drop this picture onto the back of the phone. And then depending on how you save this too, right, you might want to do a PNG file, right, to make it transparent. And so this particular guy has the white background to it, or the white background. So I think if I color and paint that, I can paint over the logo. The green's not really helping me so much in this category, but if you do bring in a JPEG with a white background, you could just repaint it, and then maybe have the texture and the color sync up together, so it's not so noticeable. Let me see if there's one more thing I can do here. Yeah, I just grabbed the wrong image. I meant to grab a transparent one. So use transparent logos. That'll make things better. But if you don't have a transparent logo, you can color it the same. Where this is really nice is if everything's like gunmetal, right? Then you wouldn't be able to tell, or theoretically speaking, you wouldn't be able to tell. I want that to be on top of everything. Let's try this. Copy, paste. Okay, so the lesson here is just grab the right logo first. All right, let's try one more thing with the screen here. We're gonna go add a new decal. And I'm gonna go find like a backdrop that I could use So one of these, the marketing team kind of sent over, hey, this might be a cool idea. You could use this. It's essentially like photoshopped phone screens, right, that you can put in here. Here looks like I found one of the original source files here. It was just like ocean with clouds. Let's go ahead and open that up. We can drag and drop this on. We can increase the size and then kind of reposition it to kind of give it a new backdrop here. And then you could add one with the digits and then maybe the keypad and so on. Start creating the look of your phone there. Okay, so that's adding decals. Logo, like I said, might be better if I had the transparent one. Something I'll have to go find. The next thing is adding some lights. So now we're going to go to our scene tab, right click, new light, pick target. This is by far one of the easiest way to add lights, or I feel like is the easiest way to add lights. So I can pick target, say, hey, I just want a highlight on this upper right hand side. If you zoom out, you can see what type of light you're using. You can go ahead and rotate where it's at in space and make sure that's like right where you want it to be. You can change its dolly distance, right? How close or far away it is. So like how soft or sharp the light would be. And then what you can also do here is change the type of light profile that comes from this. For instance, this is a rectangular light. You can change it to a point light, which then changes its shadow, and then you can go ahead and shift the sphere radius. This is really cool when you're trying to get like a little twinkle or like a little fluorescent area, like in the upper left-hand corner. You can change it to cylinder to match maybe like your garage lights, right, showing up on a car. And then if you really want to see the effect on this thing, you can go ahead and zoom in and then change your render mode back to accurate and then see how it looks with some of the lighting features that you've created. So more often than not, you'll have to add more than one light. Typically, you'll add like 4 to 6 lights. Just think if you were setting up a photo studio, how many you might want. Ring light would be kind of cool too, so you get some different halo effects. But generally speaking, that's that's how you would add a light to a project file or a backdrop. This is arguably probably the hardest thing that you need to square away, right? The lighting is what makes something look real or not, right? Or good or not, right? Even like in a studio or with recording or with a webcam. The lighting needs to be on point. So don't be afraid to spend a little bit of time, in this category with one of your files and adding lights just right. One of the things I like right here, I see like a little photo effect right there, maybe. So if I let it render a little bit longer, I'll be able to see some cool stuff. But that's adding a light. The last thing is creating animations. So keep in mind, adding lights is a professional bucket, and then adding animations is a professional bucket too. But there's one really, really important thing you need to know when you're jumping into animations. And before I get there, I know we're wrapping this up. We're almost out of time, but we have one more question. It says, hey, when you created that custom GoEngineer gloss carbon fiber texture, or appearance rather, did you override the original? And the answer is no. We saved a new one. So the original is always there. We saved a new one to a different folder, but we could have, if we wanted to. If we wanted to update the gloss, we could have selected the same file, update, override via Windows, click yes, and yeah, that would work. Hopefully that answers that question there for you, Corey. Okay, so animations. Here's the quick lowdown. Are we ready? So Control-C on my camera, Control-V. I need 2 cameras. For any animation, you need 2 cameras. Have to. It's like almost impossible to do with one, or at least I feel like it is. It's like a mental block. Maybe it's just for me. I don't know. First off, if you've tried to create animations, type it in chat. Let me know. Let me see how many of those are here. How many of you folks are here, rather? We had a question about not seeing light. You can only see light if you're in Pro. You can come down to your scenes, right-click, add light, new light, pick target. If you're not in Pro, then you won't have that option. Oops, I need to be over here so I'm not off the screen. New light, pick target. Okay, so animations. We're going to have one animation. This is going to be our perspective. So I'm going to double-click this guy. We're going to name this P. And then we're going to Control V again. And we're going to name this motion. Okay, so our motion camera, this is going to be the thing that's doing the recording. This is the thing that's doing the perspective. Okay, so in this view, I have this camera active, right? I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to find this camera in space. So this camera is located way out here, and it's looking at that. All right, I dig it. I'm also going to go to my scene, give myself a little bit more room by increasing my size here. We'll go 250. That way we're not something really tiny. Okay, so we're going to go to our camera perspective, right? Our perspective camera's on. We want to find this motion camera. So now I'm, with respect to this camera, I'm looking at this position, right? So what I can do now is, utilizing the perspective of the camera that I'm looking at on the screen, I can grab this camera and move it through space and record it, right? So to turn on my timeline, right, I need to go to View and then click on Show Timeline. Again, this is a professional function only. So with timeline on, you can adjust the global length. We'll just give ourselves like 8 seconds here. You can use the center mouse button or the control center mouse button to zoom in and zoom out on your timeline. And the quick hotkey button for creating a camera key is K. And if you, let's see, if we want to remember that, we can right click and then say animation, add keyframe. And I think if you add keyframe, it shows you K is add keyframe. So I can click on this guy and hit K. And what you'll notice is it puts a little keyframe here in my timeline. And then I can move this guy over. And then say from 0 to 2 seconds, we're going to grab this camera. And we're going to not change its position that it's looking at, right? We're not going to say look somewhere else. We're going to say, move from there to here, right? And so it's kind of going to move away. Maybe I want it to not move so far away, right? Do like one of these things. Maybe we'll go a little bit further. It'll be a fast-moving camera. And now from 0 to 2 seconds, we're going to go from there to there, right? The other thing I can do is, let's see, I want to sorry, using my left hand is not the ideal. Come on. And we can manipulate the shape of this. Anyway, let's go ahead and just play this just real quick. And now you can see that camera move from there to there and with the perspective of this guy. So now to actually watch the camera motion, we need to now cycle out of the perspective camera, right, into the camera that has motion on it. And the motion camera has this little red record button that kind of tells us, this is the recording camera. So I double click this, then now you can watch that 2-second animation moving from left to right. And really the process just repeats itself. So you can continue to do that over and over again and create this animation sequence. strategy, right, to creating an animation inside of Visualize. So I'm gonna open up to some questions. I'll be watching chat and the Q&A forum here. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and switch this back over to this guy. Because before you guys take away, I just wanted to say thank you very much for all of your time, and hopefully you got to learn something new.